الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وعنده مفاتح الغيب لا يعلمها إلا هو ويعلم ما في البر والبحر وما تسقط من ورقة إلا يعلمها ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. This, inshallah, will be the last lecture in our introduction to Tasawwuf, an introduction to to Islamic spirituality. And alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us that we've really covered a lot of the main points of Islamic spirituality. And today's lecture, being the concluding lecture, I really want us to begin to answer this question: where do we go from here? I said in the very beginning that we are going to take a step back and discuss Islamic spirituality academically. Academically, as Muslim academics mean. I mean, we're all practicing Muslims, alhamdulillah, but we're going to take a step back and sort of analyze it the way a scholar would if they were writing the history of Islamic spirituality or explaining Islamic spirituality to a beginner, etc. But I said, hopefully, it will have some personal impact on us at the end of the day, because there's no point in talking about something like this without also considering the personal side of Islamic spirituality. So where do we go from here? In the past, the ulama, they asked this question in a slightly different way, and they said, is it necessary, is it wajib, is it fard, is it obligatory for each Muslim to have a spiritual path, to have a sheikh, to have a tariq, etc.? And these were questions that were asked of the ulama throughout different ages. And it's a whole, in itself, it's its own genre of literature. But the upshot of all of that is that what is obligatory upon us, what is necessary, is the substance of what we have been talking about. It is the substance of tasawwuf that is obligatory on us. It's wajib on us. Because this is one of the reasons why we were created. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Allah Ta'ala says, blessed is the person who refines their nafs. You remember the lecture when he talks about the nafs, and cursed is the person who does not refine their nafs. And our discussion of Islamic spirituality, we will also remember, began with the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, in which Gabriel asked the Prophet, what is ihsan, what is excellence, or what is spiritual excellence, or what is perfection? And the Prophet said, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَهُوَ يَرَاكَ. That you worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you cannot know that He sees you. So the Prophet is laying down for us, and at the end of the hadith he said, this was Gabriel, he came to teach you your religion. So this is part of our religion, part of our faith tradition, is this idea of ihsan, is worshipping Allah as if we see Him. So that substance, that's never ending, that's obligatory upon us. All of the other stuff, you have to have a one sheikh, doesn't have to be in this order or that stuff changes with time. So the upshot is that the reason I wanted to discuss it this way is I want people to understand that this is not some like extra thing. This is the heart of Islam. This is the beating heart of our religion. All of the things that we hear the scholars talk about, like Sharia and usul al-fiqh and logic and theology, all of that stuff in reality is a minor aspect of our faith. But the things that we have been talking about, this is something that concerns all of us equally. We all have a nafs, we all have a self, we all struggle against ourselves, we all have good traits and bad traits, and we will all be taken to account Yawm al-Qiyamah for our actions in this world. And Islam has come to teach us, and the Prophet ﷺ has come to teach us how to live a life that is worthy of living, that we will be proud in this world and proud of the hereafter. That's Islamic spirituality. That's ihsan. And that is on all of us necessary. So where we go from here is I wanted to leave us with some practical advice, and then we can open it up to questions, inshallah. Practical advice number one is that it's important that we all have some type of dhikr that we do daily. So a simple dhikr that I want to share with you that you guys can all do daily that will add mileage to your life is that twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening, broadly defined, like all the time before Dhuhr prayer and then the time after Dhuhr prayer, is Astaghfirullah 100 times, prayers on the Prophet ﷺ 100 times with any formula, and La ilaha illallah 100 times. And the reason is each one of those, there's a hadith linked to each one of those. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّهُ لَيُغَانُ عَلَى قَلْبِي وَإِنِّي لَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ فِي الْيَوْمِ مِئَةَ مَرَّةٍ. My heart is clouded, meaning clouds of light. My heart is clouded, and I seek istighfar from Allah Ta'ala 100 times a day. So that's a sunnah. And إِنَّ اللَّهُ مَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. The command to say salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, that's from the Quran, so we do that 100 times. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever prays on me once, Allah Ta'ala prays on him 10. Right? So there's compounding effect. And then La ilaha illallah khayru ma qultu ana wal nabiyyin min qabli la ilaha illallah. The best thing I have said, and then the anbiya before me, is La ilaha illallah. So that's a basic formula. You don't have to memorize it. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to. It's very simple. And I recommend that we all add that. And I'm doing this for selfish reasons, because if whoever does that, I get some of that hasanat. Right? So I'm also, I'm very upfront, selfish reasons for doing this. So this is something very simple to do. We all pray, alhamdulillah, we all fast Ramadan, pay our zakat, all of those things. We know that we have those fard things, but we're talking about the extras that we've been sort of analyzing through the different verses and the different hadith that we've been talking about, that we need to do extra. And remember that Allah Ta'ala never tells us to do a lot of anything except dhikr. So even what I'm suggesting is very, very simple. It really should only take you 5 minutes. But the commitment to do that, the reminder to do that, will help you sort of comply with all. So when you do it, inshallah, you'll think about all the stuff we've talked about. That's the goal. It will remind you. So that's practical advice number one. Practical advice number two is that each one should have their own, another litany, another wird of prayers on the Prophet ﷺ. In the day and age in which we live in which the Prophet ﷺ is almost becoming forgotten amongst the Muslim community. Forgotten because we have people, unfortunately, that take his statements and abuse them and misuse them and mistranslate them and misapply them, etc. We have to remember that he is the central figure of Islam. We don't know anything about the Quran. We know nothing about the Sunnah. We know nothing about all the stuff we're talking about except through Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We do not know how to worship Allah were it not for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he is not just a messenger bringing like a memo. He is himself a person of praise, of devotion, of adulation, of all of the love, attention, etc. So to remind ourselves of that, we need to have our own daily litany, our own daily wird of prayers on the Prophet ﷺ. And this is something that I'll just leave open-ended, whatever somebody feels feels inclined to. It might be that you do salawat, like on the tasbih, or it might be that you read about the seerah, or you read about the physical traits of the Prophet ﷺ. Whatever it is, you have to have a relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. Allah Ta'ala says, وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Know that the Prophet ﷺ is with you. That hadith, that verse is very, very deep. The Prophet ﷺ is in all of us. When we live our Islam, we are living out what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. So when we pray, when we do something, when we say something, when we say a dua, all of this comes back that the Prophet ﷺ taught us that. So we all carry within us an aspect of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's important that we increase our relationship with him. Number 3 is I encourage you to read anything and everything that Imam al-Ghazali has written. And the reason is, there are multiple reasons why. Number 1, many of Imam al-Ghazali's books are translated in English. So it's easy, you can easily access Imam al-Ghazali. I believe all of Ihya Ulumuddin, with maybe minus 1 or 2 books. Ihya Ulumuddin is 40 books or 40 chapters. I think all of it's translated except maybe 1 or 2, and those are forthcoming. So between Islamic Text Society and Fons Vitae, you can find all of Ihya Ulumuddin. I can't recommend that enough. You can spend the rest of your life reading Imam al-Ghazali. And that's one reason, so you can find it in English. The other reason is that Imam al-Ghazali is one of these figures who really is like a Renaissance scholar. So Imam al-Ghazali is a master pretty much of everything. He's a master of fiqh, he's a master of usul al-fiqh, he's a master of theology, he mastered philosophy, and he mastered tasawwuf. There are other people, of course, who have done that. But Imam al-Ghazali's impact, not just on the Muslim world, but on the Western world, makes him such a large figure throughout the human race. And that's why we refer to him as Hujjatul Islam, the proof of Islam. So the proof of Islam's trueness is that it could produce somebody like Imam al-Ghazali. So Imam al-Ghazali is a genius, really, really a genius. So when you read in the writings of Imam al-Ghazali, particularly as they pertain to tasawwuf, you will really experience an experience in itself to read. It's full of Quran, it's full of hadith, it's full of stories of the pious people, it's full of stories of the Anbiya before us. And he brings all of this stuff about, while talking about wudu, or talking about praying the sunnah prayers. And he just goes on and on and on, deeper and deeper and deeper. So when you pray and you make wudu and you go make umrah and you pray hajj and you pay your zakah, you will understand the deepness of those acts. So he's grounded in the Quran and the Sunnah. He's universally accepted amongst the ulama. I mean, no one has ever really criticized Imam al-Ghazali. There's no blemish on his record. And he is beyond all of the groups. He's beyond all of the madhabs. And he is one of the quintessential figures in our tradition. So for those reasons, all of those reasons, plus it's accessible in English, I really recommend that you read anything by Imam al-Ghazali. And then lastly, I want to say it's very important that you keep good company. Life is short, and you need to take your life seriously because only you can live your life. No matter how old you are, no matter where you are in life, it's only you. You are the main figure in your life. And because of that, it's important that you are mindful of who you associate with. Life is too short to associate with people that bring you down, too short to associate with people that cause you to be forgetful. But rather, we want to associate ourselves with people that remind us of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said there are people that when you see them, you remember Allah. Just by seeing them, you are reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa kunu Ma as-sadiqin. O you who believe, be upright and be with those who are righteous. Allah Ta'ala does not say be righteous, but He says be with, associate with those who are righteous. So this sohbah, this companionship is essential for us. Be with people that care about these things, be with people that remind you of Allah, be with people that bring you closer to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And when in those gatherings, you will find yourself uplifted. And when you get stuck on something, ask. Ask somebody who's knowledgeable. Ask somebody who is adept at this subject matter, who is known to practice this subject matter, who has expertise in this subject matter. Ask, and inshallah, you will find the answers that you are seeking. And again, just to wrap this entire conversation, and just to remind myself and you, this is the most important thing you can do for your Islamic life. is to really think about what we've been talking about and take it seriously in your own life. That's what Islamic spirituality is about. It's to worship Allah as if you see Him, and if not, to know at least that He sees you. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam, inshallah. So, any questions about what we talked about, or the last lectures, or any topics? And before we pray, I'll tell you what the next topic is going to be, inshallah. Yes?
So last lecture you told about visiting the graves.
Mm.
Can women visit graves?
Yes, women can visit graves. There's no prohibition for women to visit graves. For us, it's fine.
Another question is that you talked about that some relics, for example, in our country we have Moy, is here of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My question is, how come this Moy and this here has come from Makkah, Medina to our country? I mean, Kashmir. I live in Kashmir. So how come it has come from here to our country? We have here
People that traveled.
But how we get from him, from his here that one? That's my question.
Because the Sahaba left, many of the Sahaba left Medina after the passing of the Prophet, and they spread throughout the world. And then they had families and children, and they set down roots and things like that. So these relics were passed that way. Some of these families in the subcontinent, they have a chain of transmission establishing that this is the hair of the Prophet, going back to the Prophet. So all of the Muslims, they were very, very big on traveling. And they would travel. Now?
We have a strong belief in that is
sure.
From Prophet.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I've seen it. It's true.
Actually, I also happen to come from Kashmir, and this is more Muqaddas.
Yeah, it's not as my.
It has a sunnah. It has been brought during Mughal period, and it came via Lahore, and then it was placed at, it's called Hazrat.
Sure.
And there was a ruler, Shah Jahan, who was a great Mughal king actually, and he ordered his ministers to build monuments in Kashmir. And there are many, they call Mughal gardens, Nishat, Shalimar, Kashmir Shah, these are the names. And one of his, actually it was the father-in-law of Shah Jahan, he made this beautiful architecture.
Yeah.
And when Shah Jahan came and he saw it, he said in Persian, Ajar Mabadas, he said it is a wonderful place for praying place. So it was, this building was already there for a long time, for centuries. And when this Moy Muqaddas was brought, it was brought via Lahore from Pakistan side. That time it was one country, but second in the Pakistan. And then it has a summit. It has, and then it was brought and put in that place. So it is authentic.
Yeah, so they have a chain of transmission of how they received the hair from the Prophet, from the Sahaba, the Tabi'in, all the way to, the modern time. Just like the Hadith, we have a sanad of the Hadith. It's the same idea. And the Ottomans were very big on collecting a lot of these artifacts. So when you go to Topkapi, for example, you can see many of these artifacts, not just from the Prophet, but all of the other Anbiya. So they collected them and they searched them out because the Muslims, this was important for them. Now all we know is bid'ah and haram and things like that. But look where we are with that. Look where that took us.
You were talking about Jilani during the khutbah. He has come to Kashmir and lived there for centuries, years together. Jilani.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it. I knew everyone was going to be happy.
Do you know that?
Yeah, I know that.
Again, sister, I have heard that.
That's why I said that story, because I knew everyone was going to be happy. Oh, Abdul Qadir.
No, I have been contradicted.
See, everyone's excited.
But he has followers, like you said.
Sidi Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, he was the mujaddid of his age, tens of thousands of people were taught and influenced by Abdul Qadir. Islamic spirituality itself, there is no tariqah that does not have Abdul Qadir al-Jilani in its chain of transmission, because he's from the Salaf. So we all owe a huge debt to Abdul Qadir al-Jilani.
And our right?
This Sheikh al-Qadir so never here, and there is actually Qasida of Sheikh.
Yeah.
وعبد القادر المشهور اسمي مجدي صاحب العين الكمال, because he did Papa Rasul.
Yeah, I know Dr. D, yeah, mashallah.
But the Kibrit Ahmad.
Yes. Kibrit al-Ahmar has salawat. There's also Bashair al-Khairat.
Yes, it is from Sheikh. And then Sister mentioned our al-Fatiha. And this is
what you showed me? Yeah.
This came later on actually, because it was almost gap of 200-300 years in between Sheikh al-Qadir.
And as a matter of fact, many of Abdul Qadir Jilani's books are also translated into English.
Yeah. So this Sheikh Sayyid Ali Hamadani, he came to Kashmir and he is responsible for conversion of 80% Muslims to Islam. And he came, he was passing by the Silk Road, which was the only that time the access to the rest of the world, to China and other places. And he happened to pass through Kashmir and he saw there are poor people there. It's a beautiful valley covered with snow-covered mountains, and it's called paradise on earth and all that. But the people were very poor there. And he happened to make friendship with the ruler that time, who had already converted to some extent to Islam, actually. Another miracle how it happened. And he then told the king that time that he wants to help to build this place. He didn't tell him from the beginning, he didn't tell Deen. Deen came at the end. And Allama Iqbal says, Dawat ilm sunnah tahzibuddin. He gave them knowledge, then taught them the handicrafts, which we are still benefiting to this day. So the king agreed that, told him, okay, and he was from Shafi. But the Islam, few people have changed it, Hanafi Islam. And Sheikh Sayyid being from Shafi, he said, that's fine. He didn't change, because some people it would have caused confusion. And then he brought 700 people from Middle Eastern, not Middle Eastern, from Tashkent area and that area, and from Iran. He was from Hamada, which is in Iran. And he brought these 700 technocrats who knew how to call in Bafi, and they knew paper mache, they knew handicrafts. And he told them to live there in Kashmir, which was, and it was, they walked, there were no other transportation. They had to walk hundreds of miles. And he left them there and told them, teach people these arts and crafts, paper mache, and carpentering and all that. And within a short period of time, and people learned it and they started, their economy grew. So they are no more now poor. And then he opened madrasas there, he opened schools, and he bought some. He was there, actually, he is this Pashmina shawl industry. He is the founder of that. He himself was, Allah had given enough money. He would travel, he traveled 44 years, and most of the years he will go for Hajj, actually, and pastor. Sheikh Ali Hamadani, who was from Shafi, basically. And then at the end, when the people got knowledge, people got tahzib, they got these arts and crafts, which we are still making money. Most of the Kashmiri people, they make living from these things. Then at the end, he told the Dean about Islam at the end. And that's what Iqbal says, that he didn't tell them Deen first. And there was no hiding, nothing. He came only 4 times and stayed there probably 1.5 years, one time. And last time when he was leaving back, he got sick and he's buried in Tashkent area. And his body was taken by his disciples there actually. And then what you said, just now zikr, this awrad fathiya it takes about 15 minutes.
Yeah, he showed it to me a couple of days
ago. And it starts all what you said. It says with astaghfirullah, then it says subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allah Akbar. Then it says ayatul kursi, and then it says la ilaha illallah, like you said, zikr. It is every time la ilaha illallah, it is with Allah Ta'ala's attributes. La ilaha illallah, Malikul Jabbar, la ilaha illallah, Wahidul Qahar, la ilaha illallah, Azizul Ghaffar, la ilaha illallah, Kareemul Sattar, la ilaha illallah, Kabirul Muta, la ilaha illallah, Khaliqul Layli wan Nahar, la ilaha illallah, Ma'budu bi kulli makan, la ilaha illallah, Mazkuru bi kulli lisan, la ilaha illallah, Kulla yawmin huwa fi shan, la ilaha illallah, Imanan billah, la ilaha illallah, Amanan min Allah, la ilaha illallah, Amanatan min indillah, لا إله إلا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله لا إله إلا ولا نعبد إلا إياه لا إله إلا حقا حقا لا إله إلا إيمانا وصدقا لا إله إلا تعبدا ورقا لا إله إلا تلطفا ورفقا لا إله إلا قبل كل شيء لا إله إلا بعد كل لا إله إلا يبقى ربنا ويفنى ويموت كل شيء لا إله إلا الملك الحق المبين لا إله إلا الملك الحق اليقين لا إله إلا العلي العظيم لا إله إلا الحليم الكريم لا إله إلا رب السماوات السبع ورب العرش العظيم لا إله إلا الأكرم الأكرمين لا إله إلا أرحم الراحمين لا إله إلا حبيب التوابين لا إله إلا راحم المساكين لا إله إلا هادي المضلين لا إله إلا دليل الحائرين لا إله إلا أمان الخائفين لا إله إلا غياث المستغيثين لا إله إلا خير الناصرين لا إله إلا خير الحافظين لا إله إلا خير الوارثين لا إله إلا خير الحاكمين لا إله إلا خير الرازقين لا إله إلا خير الفاتحين لا إله إلا خير الغافرين لا إله إلا خير الراحمين. So it goes La ilaha illa about 86. And then it says Allah Ta'ala 99 names in that, and at the end is Salah. So it is basically what you said, zikr. So I think all of us, if we spend actually what I do when I commute from home to work, I do Tarek Elgawhary in the evening, I say Salat while coming back home, I say our Kibrit Ahmad. And so each of us can, you said that zikr and Salat, that. And that's what Sheikh Said Ali Hamadani. And the most important thing is that he was recognized in 2014 by United Nations. They recognized him after 700 years that he is the principal architect figure who built a nation, Kashmir, what it is now, and gave the values and good things. And they recognized him in 2014. So if anybody, you Google Sheikh Said Ali Hamadani, you will see all this, and including our Al-Fatiha in your cell phone.
So all of this is from the children of Abdul Qadir al-Jilani?
Well, no, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani came earlier. He's 800 years. Sheikh Said Ali Hamadani came later on.
Yeah, I mean, it's from the descendants. All of these were influenced.
Well, they were both Sayyid. They were from and the line of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Sheikh Said Ali Hamadani, both from mother's side and father's side, they were related. And so Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. And al-Hasani wal-Makhra Makami wa-Aqdami ala unuki rijal. And Sheikh Said Ali Hamadani came later on. But Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani never came to Kashmir. So we are indebted to Sheikh Said Ali Hamadani, and in the mosques every day after Fajr prayer is Awrad Fatihah. And at the end it is, Salat on Rasulullah. And then there is a beautiful dua, it's called Dua-i Rikab. So, Alhamdulillah, if you have a minute, I can say dua. It's beautiful. It's Allahumma ya malik al-rikab, wa ya mufattih al-abwab, wa ya musabbib al-asbab, hayy lana sababan la nastati'u lahu talaba. اللهم اجرنا مشغولين بامرك عاملين بعدلك باعثين من خلقك آنسين بك مستغيثين عن غيرك راضيين بقضائك صابرين على بلائك قانئين لعطائك شاكرين لنعمائك متلذذين بذكرك فرحين بكتابك مناجين بك في آناء الليل وآناء النهار. And in this actually, then there is dua for all the Muslims of the world. It says, Allahumma agfir li ummati Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma arham ummata Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma ansur ummata Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma aftah al ummati Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma aslih ummata Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma karim ummata Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. اللهم أزم أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم تجاوز عن سيئات أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم يا حبيب التوابين تب علينا ويا أمان الخائفين آمنا ويا دليل المتأهلين ضلنا ويا هادي المدلين اهدنا ويا غياث المستغيثين أغثنا ويا رجال المنقطعين لا تقطع رجالنا ويا راحم العاصين ارحمنا ويا غافر المذنبين اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر لنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الابرار. اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا، اللهم استر عيوبنا، اللهم اشرح صدورنا، اللهم احفظ قلوبنا، اللهم نجر قبورنا، اللهم حسن مرادنا، اللهم تمم تقاصيرنا، اللهم نجنا ممن نخاف يا خفي الالطاف. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولمشايخنا ولأستاذنا والأساتذة والأحبائنا والأشاعرنا وقبائلنا ولمن له حق علينا ولجميع أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. وقنا ربنا شر ما قضيت وقنا عذاب النار وعذاب القبر وعذاب يوم القيامة واحشرنا مع المتقين وخلصنا من النار يا رب العالمين. اللهم بحرمة هذه أوراق الفتح افتح لنا أبواب العنايات والكرامات ووفق لنا للطاعات والعبادات واحفظنا من الآفات والبليات وبارك لنا في الرزق والعمر والحسنات. اللهم احفظنا يا حفيظ يا فياض من جميع البلايا والأمراض وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. And Sheikh said he was shocked. I again want to. But when he came in, there was already Hanafi. He didn't change it. He didn't want to come to them. He continued.
All of this because we mentioned Abdul Qadir Jilani. See? عند ذكر الصالحين تتنزل الرحمة. When you remember the pious people, Allah's mercy descends upon you. So this is the impact that these people have had in our past. They have raised and created entire nations, and their dua is still recited until today. And all of the hasanat of all of these people go back to these founders. So this is why this is a very important topic that we remember, that this is the heart, the throbbing heart of Islam, is this self-purification. Yeah.
Is it possible to have a chain of transmission without physical contact between two people?
Yeah, you feel like you can write like a letter to a sheikh and say, I want like your ijaza or your narration, and the sheikh can write back to you, things like that. But that's for narration, not for sohbah. Sohbah, companionship, is actual companionship. So in the discipline of tasawwuf, the sanad of sohbah is called al-khirqa. It's called the cloak. So that the sheikh would actually physically put like a cloak on you as a sign that you are like his student, his companion. So that requires the physical proximity. Is that what you mean?
Kind of. I guess more like things like tariqas that are born from like I guess the head had a dream and started from that.
Dream. Were you here when we were talking about the vision?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's where you got to be a little careful. Like, can you benefit from somebody who's far away? Absolutely. We benefit from the Prophet. He's in Medina and we're here. So the issue of distance is not a problem from that point of view. Now, can you learn from somebody that's somewhere else, and can you learn online? Yeah, you can learn online. That's fine. So that type of distance is fine. But I had a dream. Abdul Qadir Jani came to me in a dream, and he said, you're my student, and say this dhikr. Okay, you can do that. You can wake up and say that as long as it's, all positive stuff. But unless you're like of the super unique, that will only take you so far. You need a living shaykh. It's always safer. If you want to teach somebody, you have to have a living shaykh. You have to have somebody who is giving you actual ijazah to teach. That's without question. But can you benefit spiritually? Yes, you can. You can benefit spiritually. But it's not going to be like having the interaction with somebody. That will always be optimal.
This is mosque of the Qadir Jalani. This one.
In Kashmir?
Today's Kashmir is Halaqa. Kashmir everywhere.
But see, Abdul Qadir is buried in Baghdad.
Yeah, these are some artifacts. I think his
Yeah, he has artifacts.
can.
I've seen the mu'in of the hair of Sidi Abdul Qadir, beard, his hair of his beard. So the brother in Baltimore, he's a descendant of Abdul Qadir. Any questions? More down to earth, yeah?
And I once heard a scholar say that, a sheikh say that he learned from Imam Abu Hanifa for 9 years. So I also like that, like people who learn from scholars who have passed away and get their brain.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen. These things we have, it's throughout our literature we have that. But it's going to be limited. That has to be, again, based on the Sharia. You have to put that in the balance of the Sharia.
Again, if you see Sheikh Al Jilani and they give this story, he initially got his all Quranic lessons and Hadith lessons at home. And he was 13-year-old. His mother wanted to send him for further education. And that time, the center of education was Baghdad. And he had to go all the way from Iran to Baghdad. And those days, what they would do, they were these caravans, and they would, take money for them. They would escort them to place because they had to go through a desert. There were dacoits and they were robbed and things like that. So his mother, she, which is a 13-year-old boy, and she made a dress for him, white dress, and she put.
Were you the Jummah today?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, this is the story I said in Jummah.
I mean,
You must have heard.
I will hear
You
it.
see,
but
subhanAllah.
I did not.
This is how we begin.
You must have heard live.
No, I don't know. I came directly from work here.
Oh yeah, no, this is what the Jummah was about. This story.
Inshallah, I got this and she put few dinars under the whatever that was the money in that sleeve, and told him that when you go reach there, if you need any money, this you should go. But because she knew in the way in the desert there will be dacoits and all. And they walked through the desert and they were attacked by the dacoits. And they told them stay on one side, and they are searching everybody. And they got this young boy, little boy, and they told him, "You have money?" He said, "Yes," and with a smile. And the dacoit, he went there and he searched him, talked about him, he didn't find anything. And he laughed at him, and the chief dacoit was passing by. He said, "Why are you laughing? This is a serious matter. They are taking everything, all the possessions from everybody." And he says, "He says, come here." He says, "Chief, see this young boy. He's saying he has money, and I have searched him 3 times. He has no money. And he's so confident he has money." He said, "I have searched him, but he still said." So chief dacoit came to this boy and he told him, "You have money?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Where is that money?" He said, "Here." So he showed him, because the others did not see that. They opened him and there were dinars. And this chief dacoit told him, it is all, if you Google it, Sheikh Al-Qadir, you will see. And he says, why did you tell, we didn't find this money. Why did you show us this money? He said, because when I left, my mother said, never tell lies. So I'm not going to lie because I promised my mother I will never tell. And the chief deputy, he started crying. He remembered his mother. We had told him the same thing, but he didn't keep up to it. And he asked the other deputies, give all the money back to these people. And he accompanied the whole caravan to Baghdad, where Sheikh al-Qadim was a student, where he is now. He's buried there. He was a student there. Then he became a scholar, and in between he lives for about 20 years. Actually, there are different places people say he came actually for meditation and all that. And then he came back and became the chief of this madrasa, principal in a way. And then he passed away there, and he is in Baghdad actually. I have never been. Actually, you've been. So this is the story you will see.
Maybe his wife might have told him.
Maybe. Any other questions?
So what do the current Salafi say about Shaykh? Because he don't remind Muhammad. So do they have that, that love for him? Because even the Shaykh.
No, Salafis, they don't love anybody. They kicked out love a long time ago. But the real Salafis, the original Salafis, they care about raqa'iq and zuhd. So they talk about that a lot. So maybe, a story here or there. But like, the zuhd of Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal and things like that. So you'll find them more discuss those type of things. But love, no. There's no love.
But in their fiqh, is he an authoritative?
No.
Even though he was a.
It's Ibn Taymiyyah for them, that's it.
But Ibn Taymiyyah himself says, Bayni wa bayni shaykhain.
Yeah, but
he loves him, and if.
Ibn Taymiyyah was a Qadri.
Qadri, yeah.
The Salafi's name. They have no love. They took love out of Islam. Nobody? Wow, mashallah. Yeah.
This is not related to what you were talking about.
Sure.
A question about Idda and how it applies different places, like here. There were some questions about a discussion. Can you say something about it?
So all the idda after a woman is divorced or a woman's husband dies,
Yeah.
there's a waiting period. And for some reason, there's a common misconception that Muslims think that means a woman can't leave her house.
Exactly, that's the question.
Yeah, that's not what idda is. All the idda is that the woman will sleep in the marital house or in her home for the idda period. I mean, during the day, she can do what she needs to do, but at the end of the day, she will come back and spend the night at that house. Except if there's a extenuating circumstance, like if she herself is elderly and she needs care and she needs to go to the hospital or go to a relative's house. But that transfer would happen immediately, and then she would stay there and have the waiting period there. It does not mean that she cannot live her life or go to work or things like that. So that's a common misconception. And the idda is something that Allah Ta'ala has bestowed. There's great reward for a woman for complying with that. She shouldn't think that this is somehow negative or bad or it is more powerful. That period of the idda is more powerful than Hajj and Umrah. That she can't go perform Hajj and Umrah, meaning that she gets more reward for complying with the idda than for going to something like Hajj and Umrah. So she can go to work, conduct her life, etc., but she would spend the night in that house.
We might maybe say during the misconception about for example, why women, in my country, they said we should not look at the symmetry during the procession of the
Yeah, there was stuff in the Jahiliyyah where women would go to the cemeteries and they'd like tear their clothes and start screaming and things like that. So the Prophet ﷺ forbade that. But do you know any women in any Muslim country that do that? No, so
But that's what they,
it's not a problem. That's where it comes from.
so that's what they don't.
And they used to be paid. So they would be paid to do that. They would be paid to like go to in the Jahiliyyah, they would be paid to go and start screaming and cut themselves, I don't know, all this crazy stuff. Jahiliyyah. So the Prophet ﷺ said, you can't do that. Don't go to the graves. And then after Islam, became more firmly established in Mecca and Medina, then the Prophet ﷺ, كُنْتُ أَنْهَاكُمْ عَنْ زِيَارَةِ الْقُبُورِ أَلَا فَزُورُهَا. I used to forbid you from going to the grave, but now go because it will remind you of the akhirah. So now we go. Women go to the grave, it's not a problem. In our culture, women go, we do ziyarah all the time.
So that's not during the funeral.
Yeah, usually we pray the janazah in the mosque, and then the body is taken to the grave and buried. Just like we do here.
So women can go.
No problem. Even when we go here, women come all the time. There's always one like Salafi uncle that says this is haram. Just ignore him. Don't listen to them. That's why you have me. Seriously. And then they go to the grave and then they're like all the way over there, like at the end of the graveyard. Like, why did you come all this way if you're going to stand all the way over here? It's like their uncle or their father or their grandpa. Come and, When we buried Roxana, Auntie Noreen was very emotional. She said, can I come? I said, of course you can come. And she made dua and she prayed for her. No problem. It's no problem. Because it reminds the whole life cycle for us, we're supposed to be involved with birth and death. So we're close to that life cycle. It's a sunnah. You get something?
I was going to ask if there's any prophetic artifacts locally available.
There's a community in Virginia that has one of the hairs of the Prophet ﷺ, but they only bring it out during the Mawlid, once a year. And I've gone and I've seen it twice, and in the 2 times I've seen it, it's grown. That is one of the attributes of the hair of the Prophet ﷺ, is that it grows. So I saw this year, it was double the size that I saw last year. I mean, I was like so sure, it was so obvious it grew. But the brother that has it, he only brings it out on the 12th of the Rabi' al-Awwal after Salat al-Fajr. That's it. So you gotta go to the mosque and then there's a brother in Baltimore that has a hair of the Prophet ﷺ. Those are the ones I know about. But there are some. I think somebody in New York.
How come they can?
Huh?
How come they get older?
It's been in their families. It's been in their families, and then they cut it and they distribute it. Has it been tested? I mean, they don't test these things. You just take it. There's no test. You just say, Inshallah, I believe it. There's no like Sharia involved in it. It's just an artifact, and we respect it as such, and that's that. No, Muslims don't think like that. We're barakah people. Sure. Okay, so next week there'll be no class. I'll be away, and then the week after that we're going to start, inshallah, the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah. We're going to go a little Salafi on everybody and talk about the Dajjal, and because who's seen the Messiah on Netflix? I think it's important because, I'll just tell you like 2 sentences and then you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. But in 1984, there was this novel that was written by this British author called The Mahdi. And the whole premise of the book is that this Mahdi character emerges in Medina. And then all these Muslims, they start following him. And the head of the British intelligence and the CIA, they're trying to figure out who this guy is. And then it comes to Hajj, and then the Mahdi guy is like, look, I'm going to show you a sign that I'm the Mahdi. And they bring like the lamb to to slaughter the dhabiha, and then he like points, and then it dies. And it turns out, I don't know who's going to read the book, so I'll just tell you what happened in the book. So it turns out that the Mahdi in the book is the son of the head of the British intelligence community, and he sent him to Arabia at a young age to grow up with the Arabs so that he could claim he's the Mahdi. And that the way that the lamb or the goat dies is they redirected some kind of satellite, and they use the satellite as a laser beam. So my sheikh actually told me about this book. I thought he was joking. So I found it. It cost 1 cent on Amazon. It cost more to ship than the actual book. So I read this book and I was like, this is crazy, and how did my sheikh even know about this book? And then lo and behold, I read this book maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. Then lo and behold, this Messiah show comes. And it's essentially the same thing. But this guy in the book, the Mahdi guy, doesn't talk about Sunnah at all. He totally talks about the Quran. And his argument is so that all the Muslims will be united. Right? Quran only. And in the show, the Messiah, what did they say? What did the CIA lady say? We had you in lockup and we never saw you pray once. Don't Muslims pray 5 times a day? He doesn't pray. He's like a Dajjal. He's not like the Mahdi at all. And the reason I think that stuff is important is that this is a way that people, if they wanted to, they could play with Muslims. They could play and trick us by manipulating these figures. And there are people in the Muslim community that that would fall for it. When I was doing a lot of this violence extremism stuff, and I was talking to intelligence people, these people are not very intelligent, unfortunately. And they would ask me, what do you think is going to happen after ISIS? I said, after ISIS, either somebody's going to claim they're the Mahdi, or somebody's going to claim that they're Isa alayhi salam. Because that's the next thing. You have the Khalifa, right, this bozo, and then the next thing, you have to up your game. What's the next thing? I'm the Mahdi. How can you up the Mahdi? I'm Isa alayhi salam. Yeah, and Muslims that are weak-minded, they'll fall for that kind of stuff. So I watched the show. I binge watched it all the way from Washington to Cairo. Just watched episode after another. And that was my conclusion, that it's important that we know the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah so we don't fall, for some sketchy. And by the way, the Messiah guy in the show, in the Netflix show, he's like deranged. You find out by episode 7 or 8, he's like deranged. And I think there'll be a new season. Deranged is he's cuckoo. He's not right in the head.
Is there any truth to any of it?
No, of course not. That's not the Mahdi. The Prophet ﷺ gave us very clear descriptions of the Mahdi. The Mahdi, his name will be Muhammad, and his father's name will be Abdullah. So his name will be Muhammad ibn Abdullah. I mean, you can't get more clear than all the Prophet ﷺ had to do is give us a picture of his passport page. And he said he will be from the descendants of Imam Hassan, not al-Hussein, Imam Hassan. So there you go. And then he will be a little chubby. He will be white with reddish tinge to his cheeks. He will be an alim. Everyone will love him. People will listen to him. I mean, there are descriptions of this guy. Not like some sketchy, killing the goat with the laser and stuff like that. That's not the sign of the Mahdi. So we need to know. So I realized, and I thought it would kind of be fun, but I realized that we should discuss the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah because that's the last question that Gabriel asked in the hadith of Jibreel. He says, Mata as-sa'a, when is the hour? He says, La as-sa'ilu adru min al-mas'ul anhu bi'a'lamu min as-sa'il. The one asking doesn't know more than the one being asked. فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنْ أَمَارَاتِهَا. So Gabriel says, tell me about its signs. So the Prophet gives some of the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah. So I thought we can have some fun and talk about that. So we'll be ready for season 2. Season 2 comes out, we'll know how to do it. Anybody have anything else? Yeah.
There are communities in the subcontinent who claim that the Mahdi is common and they are the followers.
Yeah, sure. In the Mahdi, there was a claim of the Mahdi of the Sudanese, and they went with their tasbih in front of the British, and the British mowed them down with their machine guns. And the Mahdi army. The Messianism it exists. It exists more in Shia Islam than in Sunni Islam, but it exists. Yeah, you had something?
But like, there's a group of Muslims called Qadianis, and they claim that the Mahdi has come, like, Isa has come, in Qadian, and they're like, they're very peaceful Islam, they're not like, intolerant people of Pakistan, but they've been persecuted in Pakistan because of their beliefs that they are different. So the Quran is the same as, I think the Quran is the same as our prophet, you can pray like any other regular Muslim. But they've been persecuted in Pakistan, they don't let them pray, or they've been branded as non-Muslims by the Pakistani government, by 1972. The other issue is that we have one Nobel laureate, the first Nobel laureate was Dr. Abdul Salam from Pakistan, and he was from the same Jamaat. So the government, they not entertain him, and I think it's to his credit that Pakistan has an atom bomb act, because he created the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission. He trained all the scientists, physicists, and I think Pakistan is very grateful to his services, but he was not respected in Pakistan. He had to leave Pakistan and went to Italy to establish his institute, over there. So, so this kind of a little I don't know what you think about, because President Obama has written a lot on Islam, and some people really respected him in the beginning because he defended Islam against the Britishers and the Christians who came at that time, because he was very, very well read. But when he came to be like a Mahdi, a lot of Muslims, the regular Sunni Muslims, turned against him.
Sure. So look, I don't think that anyone should be persecuted, because I think there are better ways to deal with people. But that being said, the boundaries of Islam are so wide. They're so simple. It's La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. If you believe in that, you're a Muslim. If you're going to add all this other stuff, you're not a Muslim. So if you believe that this guy is like the Mahdi or a prophet or receiving revelation after the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then you're not a Muslim. I'm not trying to be offensive, but it's as simple as that. The Christians across the street, are they Muslim? No, they're not Muslim because they don't believe in what we believe. What is it that we believe is so simple, so wide, that it encompasses the Sunni, and it encompasses the Shia, and it encompasses the Ismaili, and the Zaydis, and the Ibadis, and all of that. Even though we have differences inside the family of Islam, it encompasses all of that, but none of them say that there is revelation after Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu. So this is why, but you see, I get this Qadiani thing a lot. I'm not advocating for persecution, but you can't expect to say that in a Muslim majority country and then complain that you're not considered Muslim. You yourself have taken yourself outside of Islam by saying that there's revelation after the Prophet. So there's Islam, and then at some point there's not Islam. They're peaceful, yes. They do good work, yes. Many of the African Americans in this country that became Muslim became Muslim through Ahmadi da'is in the early part of the Islam's role in America. They translated the Quran into English first. I'm not negating. I went to school with Ahmadis. They're wonderful people and stuff like that. But on this issue of, what do you say about the Ahmadis? Well, what do they say? That's my question. Do they believe that somebody has received revelation after Sayyidina Muhammad, like the Baha'is, for example? Then you're not a Muslim. Because you said that, not me. But if they say Ghulam Ahmad was like a nice guy, he was a reviver, okay, fine, then you're a Muslim. No problem. But I'm not advocating for the persecution. But it's very important that we understand that Islam is these two statements. There's got to be a definition for what is Islam and what's not Islam. You see what I'm saying? There's probably a better way of dealing with it. But, this Qadiani thing that we're persecuted, and well, gee, I wonder why, because you're coming into the house of Islam and trying to change it. We're not going to be very welcome. You see? I know, no offense to anybody, but I'm just trying to say it the way it is.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't know what you read about them, but they have the same Quran.
Sure, yeah, they have the same
But
Quran.
I
Yes.
don't know, he doesn't have a new book, like the Mormons have a new book, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't have any new book, but he worked on mostly on the Quran and concentrated the Quran.
Okay, so my question is, do they believe? What do they say about that guy, Ghulam Ahmed? Does he receive revelation?
I don't know if it's revelation, but he probably had some religious. I don't know. I haven't read most of his work, but
Sure, we all have spiritual experiences. No problem with that. Does he receive revelation? Is he a prophet after the seal of prophets?
They think he's a Mahdi that like Hazrat Isa came in his form during this world time. So that's what they think. I mean.
Okay, so if they don't say that he's a prophet, but they say the Mahdi and Isa, then we say they are Muslims of Bid'ah. They are Muslims that have belief of Bid'ah. Fine, so we bring them closer. But again, did Jesus come back? Did we miss something? Did the Mahdi come and we missed him somehow? How about all the other signs about the Mahdi? What happened? It doesn't make sense. That's why we'll talk about the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah. But I don't want people to think that I'm saying this and I'm trying to be rude. I don't know what else are we supposed to say. We have very simple belief. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Muhammad Rasulullah means that we believe that he is the seal, wa khatam al-nabiyyin, that he is the seal of the prophets. That's our belief. Now, if you think there's, prophecy after that, khalas, lakum dinukum waliya din. To me, is my belief to you. You're not a Muslim. Then don't call yourself a Muslim. Because me, as the mufti or as the qadi, and I have to adjudicate a case. It has to do with marriage, and it has to do with the biha, and it has to do with burial, and it has to do all of these things. I'm going to ask this person, do you believe in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah or not?
But they said they believe in that. So that's
Okay, khalas, then they're Muslim.
So they said they believe in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. But I think it's more of a ulama discussion or fight, that's what I believe. I'm not an ulama, I'm not like a very well read Islam, but I think the ulama fighting on these points that, not focusing on Amal, but focusing on these 4 points.
Look, if they say they believe in the kalima, that's all I need to hear. When we had this huge intra-Muslim thing that culminated in the Amman message to define who are all the groups that equal Islam, the issue came to the Aga Khan and the Ismailis. So the ulama said, write a letter to the Aga Khan, ask him, do you believe in the kalima? He said, we believe in the kalima and we follow the Ja'fari madhab and fiqh. Khalas, then we're Muslim. That's all I need to hear. I don't have to investigate. I don't have to hear all of these stories about the Ismailis and the Aga Khanis. They're Muslims. Because the Aga Khan himself, His Highness Hassan himself said, we are Muslim. So it's the same thing for the Qadiani. Are you Muslim? You believe in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? You're with us or you're not with us?
They say that. They say
Khalas. Then we can talk. But don't say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah plus, and then expect me not to get upset.
That's the misconception that they don't believe. But it's always an enmity or this kind of, So I'm just saying that the nation of Pakistan was built by enmity, our founding fathers.
Sure.
His people who helped him, were
Sure.
enmity.
And his wife was Zoroastrian.
His wife was Zoroastrian. He was from Ismaili family, but he was not very religious. But somebody asked him, that what kind of sect do you belong to? He said, I belong to the sect of Muhammad, So nobody would answer that because they don't.
Yeah, that's a great answer. He's with us then.
Yeah. And somebody asked him also that, his mind Zafar Khan was the first foreign minister of Pakistan. He was the first declaration of Pakistan was written by him. And he was the first foreign minister of Pakistan. And he was also judge in international, law, international, very big judge in in the UN. When he was the first foreign minister of Pakistan, he was an American. And he's only mentioned in our books that his contribution of Pakistan, is amazing for a Muslim country to come out. He's like a pillar, but then he's taken out of all these people.
No, not denying any of that, but this is a very basic thing. The way we deal with sects in Islam is we say, do you believe in this kalima? Because that's what if you looked up like Islam in like Wikipedia or in like an encyclopedia or Encyclopedia Britannica, it has to say Islam is belief in, it's got to be defined. Just like you can define Christianity, just like you can define Montgomery County, there has to be some kind of definition. The definition of Islam is somebody who believes in the oneness of the divine and the finality of the prophecy of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's it. It doesn't matter if you're Sunni, Shia, all of that stuff comes secondary or tertiary. So the question goes back to them. Do you believe in this? Does he say yes, but I have a problem? Then khalas, you yourself, you've taken yourself outside of Islam. I didn't do that. I have no power to take someone outside of Islam. But I can tell you what Islam is and what it's not. When I'm with the rabbi and the priest and all of these people, I'm not a Christian and they're not Muslim. We don't get upset, but we work together. So the issue that I have, maybe because I'm not Desi and I didn't grow up with this, but the issue I have is no one till today has ever answered this question for me and what the Qadianis actually believe. I went to school with Qadianis. The people that I went to school with, they had the best akhlaq, they were the best people, they were the most trustworthy. I'm not denying any of that. We're talking about Islam or not Islam. So if you have a Qadiani friend, bring him and we'll ask. But I tell you, they will not answer the question. That's my experience.
We should have like interfaith with them. They have a
Intra-faith. No problem.
So we should, because there we should consider, like, I'm just saying, let me give you an example that somebody asked me that we declare Qadiani non-Muslim. And he said, who might judge somebody Muslim or non-Muslim, that's not my responsibility.
We put it back to them, but so they gotta, at some point, they gotta answer the question.